This is Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee. I'm Ben Snyder.
And I'm Everett McNair. And we want you to know that if you don't believe in God, you're not alone. Right here in East Tennessee, you can find free-thinking atheists and agnostics. This show is for them and people curious about living a life free of superstitious beliefs.
This is a call-in show. However, we have only one phone line, so if you can't get through, we invite you to email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com. The Atheist Society of Knoxville is a fun meetup that meets at bars and eateries around Knoxville. Tonight's meetup is at Barley's Taproom and Pizzeria from 5 o'clock on into the evening. And we invite anyone and everyone to come who is friendly toward atheists and who's interested in open and friendly conversation. We only ask that if you plan to preach, proselytize, provoke, or punch, please don't come.
The monthly activities of the Rationalists of East Tennessee are on the first and third Sunday mornings, are usually lectures with a lively roundtable discussion. The second Sunday is a book club. May's book is The Invisible Gorilla, How Our Intuitions Deceive Us. The fourth Sunday is the Reflections Gathering, a potluck afternoon meeting at a member's house.
Visit our websites for additional monthly program details, including times and locations.
Today, with the viewers' help, we will explore the public perception of atheists.
But first, we have some news items. First item, there was, according to Huffington Post, a young Coptic Christian, 17 years old, was sentenced to jail for 3 years, which is the maximum penalty for his age, for publicly posting on Facebook insulting photos of cartoons about the Prophet Muhammad and Islam, and is being charged with inciting riots, which were anti-Christian riots that ended with the firebombing of 6 different Christian-owned homes, including the young man's own home. It's quite disturbing to see this sort of behavior. The idea that your beliefs being insulted could be, reason to go and arrest a young man or, put him in prison with murderers, rapists, and such.
That's the problem when you live in a society that holds religion as one of its core structures, especially one religion. You can't have any opposing view or you're in trouble. All right. Also in the news, the University of San Antonio has what they call the Smut for Smut program, which is where an atheist group at the university exchanges Bible for pornography. This is because they feel like with all the sex, murder, and all that goes on in the Bible, porn is a lot more friendly to watch and read. Well, not read, but more friendly to watch than it is to read the Bible. And it's also a way they opened up discussion with Christians and all that around.
Yes. To be able to talk about, the sort of offensive things that people find within the Bible, things that, you don't teach children in Sunday school, usually. The next item we have, over Easter weekend, this past weekend, Sacramento Muslims lent out their mosque to a group of churchless Christians. For several years prior to this Easter, this church had been renting out another church in order to hold their services and their Easter celebrations. And their lease expired on March 31st, leaving very little time to find another place to worship. And the pastor says that his name is Reverend Michael Morin. Morin says that he had a dream where he saw a newspaper article that said, Easter at a mosque. And he thought, okay, I'll give that a shot. And so he called up a local leader whose name is Dr. Metwali Amer of the Sacramento Area League of Associated Muslims. Amer agreed with Reverend Morin and agreed to let them have the church for their services. Both men have come out and expressed their interest in interfaith, working together. The idea that different people with different ideas should be able to get along together and support one another without being divided against one another, which is very, very, I think, promising and good. Although of course this did not go without some complaints from area Christians.
Yeah. All right. Up next in the news, a billboard that's in Nashville, Tennessee, featuring a woman who's a prominent atheist leader in Clarksville, Tennessee, and it basically shows the billboard, shows her picture, and says this is what an atheist looks like, getting the point across that we're normal humans, we're just like everybody else. Well, she's now receiving death threats about this because she publicly came out and did a billboard as an atheist, and basically it's just, I mean, I don't get the point of the death threats. It was just a harmless campaign. It didn't offend anybody's religion or anything like that. But I don't know.
Yeah. The next item we have is a longtime atheist activist whose name is Patrick Green, converted to Christianity recently, and was so moved, in fact, that he decided he wished to be a pastor. Mr. Green had been threatening to bring a lawsuit forward against, I guess, his county in Texas for allowing a nativity scene to be put on public property. The change in his attitude, however, came about 2 months after the lawsuit was brought forward. He found out from doctors that he had cataracts and that he would be losing his sight. And so a Christian woman named Jessica Cry went to her church and asked fellow members if it would be okay or if they would agree to raise funds to help Mr. Green to be able to have the surgery to correct his eyes, and they raised $400. He was so moved by this, as he put it in his own words, he was flabbergasted that Christians would help atheists. One of the curious things about this, of course, is that both Christians and atheists had actually donated money to help Patrick Green at the website he had set up, and yet the gesture from Christians from the opposite side of the argument he'd been fighting moved him so much that he changed. And he plans to use some of the money, he said, that it was raised to move out of San Antonio and buy his wife a mobile home, which I'm not sure is exactly what he should be doing with that.
Still trying to wrap my head around the story. I mean, there was no miracle or anything. It's just people were nice to him, so he's going to go with their ideas and their thoughts.
One of the interesting things about a lot of conversion stories, with regard to any religious belief you may hold, is that people are often moved by occurrences of kindness from people of a different ideal. But it's interesting because just because someone is kind to you does not mean that what they believe or their motivations for doing it are true. And it doesn't seem like he really took that into consideration. I, for example, I used to be a Christian, and I've had atheists be very kind to me, give me money, clothing, help me when I was in great need. And, that didn't move me to become an atheist, but it did help me to see that they were nice people and that I should just demonize them and think that they just don't care.
Yeah.
So.
Our next topic is about an article that appeared in the newspaper here in Knoxville. It was Pascal's Wager, pretty much saying it was a safe bet. It compared, it was by Tim Lee. It compared Joanna Moore, who was an actress who guest starred as a love interest on the Andy Griffin Show, who had problems with drugs and alcohol, but later became a Christian in her life, to Christopher Hitchens. Pretty much saying that Joanna Moore made the safe bet. Now, if you don't know what Pascal's Wager is, it's pretty much saying that it is safe to, if there is a God, you might as well believe him because that's the safe choice. But my whole problem with Pascal Wagers is dealing with mostly on the Christian religion. And according to that religion, God knows what's in your heart. So you can fool yourself, you can fool other people, you can fool people in your church, but you couldn't fool God.
Right.
So.
And it also, Pascal's Wager is also a false dichotomy.
Yeah.
Because it only considers two possible options, very simplistically too. It considers that there's one form of Christianity versus no God at all, which is atheism. And it doesn't consider at all, that Christianity has several different sects and groups and different ways of believing, because most people don't realize that when they're, in their beliefs. And the same can be true of atheists, that there's many different ways to be an atheist. Yeah. But there's also all these other belief systems that could be true, and Pascal's Wager just does not consider that. So, and an extra note, if there is no God, you have lost something by worshiping him. Ah, yes.
Yeah.
We have an audience member making an excellent point. Another problem with Pascal's wager is that it suggests that if there's no God and yet you believe in God, for example, if you're Christian but turn out to be wrong, Pascal, the mathematician who came up with it, assumed that there would be nothing lost, but the problem is that there is a lot lost. You could have lived a completely different life that may have been better, and if you care about the truth of your beliefs and the fact that or the idea that you lived your life for what is true, then I would say you'd be highly disappointed to have found out you have not lived for the right position.
I totally just don't think it's a good way to live your life, just in case. I mean, it's a false way of living your life, pretty much.
Right. One other news item. USA Today, this was their weekend paper for Easter weekend. Their front page had an interesting article that bore the main title of Religious Reverts Come Back to Faith, and the subtitle of Churches and Synagogues Push to Reclaim Those Who Have Walked Away. It was an interesting article because it talks about how, in spite of the fact that U.S. population has grown by 30%, by the way, the years we're talking about here are from 1990 to 2008, the 2 years when they did these pollings, the U.S. population grew by 30% in that time. Over the same amount of time, 18 years, the most major religions lost members, or barely, as it put it, kept pace with the population growth. And all the examples they gave, such as Catholics, Baptists, Methodists, Lutherans, Presbyterians, Jews, and by Jews I mean belief, not ethnicity, and Episcopal and Anglican together, all of them had significant losses or slight losses, showing a downward trend over these 18 years. Which was very interesting, and the article goes on to talk about different strategies that Jews and Catholics and Baptists and such are trying to put forward in order to reclaim people who have walked away, which is interesting. Since one of the biggest issues they're facing is that their youth do not have interest anymore, or as much interest. The article said that about 70% of Jewish young adults are not really concerned or interested with their own, belief system within which they were born, and they're really struggling to reclaim them in a sense, or capture their attention. We do need to mention this is a call-in show. I don't recall mentioning this before, and so we invite you to call in if you'd like to talk about any of the news items that we've just discussed, or anything about the topic we're going to be discussing today. We'd like for you to do that.
And our show topic today is the public perception of atheism. So please feel free to call in. You can talk about that or anything else you want. Number at the bottom of the screen.
All right. So, what is our topic, Everett?
The public perception of atheists.
Oh, sorry. All right. What is atheism? The atheism is often misunderstood among many people. I know growing up, I really didn't know what atheism was. It was just a word I'd maybe heard once or twice growing up in a Christian home. Atheism is often misunderstood, so I think we should start, with discussing how, what we are and what that means. Atheism is the opposite of theism. Theism being the belief in God, and atheism being the lacking of that belief. People often think that atheism means that there's no God, or that you believe that there isn't any God at all, which are forms of atheism, but that requires other things such as knowledge or such.
I don't see if there was good proof of God. If he came down in the middle and talked to me, I'd start believing in him, but he hasn't, and I see no proof of his existence. One of the misconceptions there is in the public is that atheism is a religion. It's the exact opposite of a religion. As atheists, we have no set creed, which is one of the main factors in a religion. We don't go by any dogma. We have many different aspects. Nobody agrees. I don't think anybody really agrees on one thing, on everything, probably. We have agreement, but It's just not a set code that we live by.
Right. The only thing that all atheists would probably agree on is that there is no such thing as a God.
Yeah.
Beyond that, very, very different points of view. Another misconception is that we believe in or worship Satan or the devil or Lucifer or whatever term you would like to use or name. At my place of work, I've had a manager and a coworker each come up to me after hearing I'm an atheist and ask me, how is it that you don't believe God exists and yet you worship Satan? And they're very, very confused as to how that could be, which, if that were true, would be very confusing.
Yeah.
And I have to explain to them, no, that, I don't believe that God exists and Satan is inextricably tied to the belief in God.
Yeah,
in the Christian sense.
It's just makes no sense to ask that question, but I get that people are confused. I guess people confuse us with Satanists because I guess they think if anybody doesn't believe in God, they must therefore be pure evil or whatever.
Yeah.
Another thing that people think is that we are mad at God. It is hard for me to be mad at something I don't believe in. I don't get mad. It's like me being mad at Batman. So,
Or the Joker.
Yeah, there's no point in it. I don't believe in it, so therefore it really has no effect on my life at all at that point.
In a sense, I can understand why someone would think this, though, because, for example, when I watch a movie or a television show and I see a person doing things I really don't like, two people I care about, I can become upset with that character and, hope that justice be served or something like that. So in that sense, I can be mad at a character, but...
Yeah, but I get that, but I don't vehemently deny their existence because I'm mad at them. It's not like, it doesn't exist,
right, I don't,
mad.
Yeah, in the case of the show, it's obvious the character himself or herself does not exist. In the case of God, it seems to be the same way. Another misconception is that atheists have not read or studied the Bible, that we are simply ignorant, which is, a fair thing for people to say at first, but, it seems to be an assumption that's unfair.
Yeah, reading the Bible was pretty much what started me down my road of atheism. And just after reading it, I wasn't even sure what I just read. It was just so mind-boggling how insane it was. And
what was it in the Bible that bothered you?
God's viciousness, really. His anger, him hardening Pharaoh's heart, so to not let the Jews out of Egypt, and just going as so far as to killing the firstborn when he's the one who hardened Pharaoh's heart. Can't remember his name. He went to war and he promised God he'd sacrifice the first thing that came up to him. And of course, and it was his daughter. Yeah. And did God tell him not to do it? No, God let him do it. I mean, it was just horrible reading these stories that they skipped over in church. That of course, the Exodus story, but some of the more sacrifice and murdering of people that just gets glossed over because they want to get to what the good meaning is that they want to bring to you.
And it's interesting because, like in the case of the Exodus story, you have an example of a story where people are taught to justify the killing of children, such as with the plague that wiped out, or the angel of death coming down and killing out the Egyptian firstborn. It is very disturbing, and yet they will teach this in even Sunday school once you're old enough, and they will teach you that it's not God's fault, but rather to blame Pharaoh, even though, as you've mentioned, God had affected Pharaoh's ability to, choose to let them go, and thus kept them there to the point that Yahweh then could justify doing this.
Yeah. And there's other things that, also the story of Lot. Yeah, and that whole story is messed up. How his wife died, his daughters he was gonna offer his daughters up to be raped by an angry mob, and he's supposed to be the good guy in the story. Let's not forget this. And then his daughters come, and daughters mate with their father.
The lesser known.
We got a caller.
Oh, we have a caller. Oh, hello, caller. Hello.
Okay. Hey.
Hi. Can we get a name or nickname?
My name is Jeff.
Jeff.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hello, Jeff.
What would you like to talk about?
Well, I was just kind of interested, I was flipping through the channels and I see you guys on here. And I guess I was wondering, like, what is it like for you guys? I see that you're atheists. What is it like for you guys living in Knoxville where there's a church, it seems like literally on every corner? It's just like, that is the culture around here, It's kind of like everyone just assumes, you're just this, like, diehard Christian.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking, well, I was in total shock when I saw this on TV,
Okay.
What is your experience like that with that?
You want to go first, Everett? Go ahead.
I really haven't had any bad experience with anybody here. I came out as an atheist when I moved to Knoxville after me and the group and everything. It's been fine. Some of the church signs get a little aggravating, and I'm not gonna lie, having a billboard that says we need to talk with a quote saying it was God, that gets a little aggravating, but I can deal with it. I understand it's part of the culture. I understand that it's not gonna go away.
My experience, I used to be a Christian. I stopped being a Christian a couple of years ago. So for most of my life, I was fine within the culture, you might say. Now, I find that if I have conversations in public, certain places with people about this, it attracts the attention of other people, their comments, their derision. When I was undergoing deconversion, when I was shifting away from Christianity to being an atheist, I went around and visited churches to ask pastors questions. And I would bring my Bible because, for one thing, I was raised, here's the Bible, study it. And so I brought it thinking, I need to bring this to be able to look stuff up and talk with them. And people just assumed I was a Christian and had no idea that an atheist was visiting their church to ask questions. And so they'd be taken aback in, like, Sunday school or whatever when I would ask them questions about, why God did certain things. And so it's very interesting. Fortunately, though, there are groups that we can go to congregate and talk. Atheist Society of Knoxville and Rationalist City, Tennessee, both of whom fund this show, for us to come on here and talk with people and explain things.
As a personal story, to be honest, without ask, I'd probably still be a closet atheist, scared to come out.
Yeah. So does that give you a good idea, or do you have any? Was there something we missed?
Yeah, no, that answered my question.
Okay.
I appreciate it, guys.
Well, thank you.
All right, well, y'all take it easy. Thanks.
All right, you too, Jeff. Thank you.
All right,
Yeah.
bye.
All right.
All right, another misconception about atheists is that we know God is real, we just don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know God is real, and that's all. It's as simple as that. I don't know. There's no proof. Give me empirical proof, and I will believe.
Yeah. I think it's I think everyone, even a lot of atheists, have the same misconception about Christians and other theists, where atheists look at people who say they believe and think there's no way you really believe that, which shows the absurdity of this, because at least most Christian people I grew up knowing and still know, will tell you, no, I really do believe this. And, we often find ourselves having to say, no, we really don't believe this. It's understandable that if it makes sense to you, you might think it makes sense to someone else, and they obviously would, think what you think. But it's, not that obvious to us, you might say, or, not reasonable to us. And so, it's very difficult to get past that with some people. The next misconception we have is that atheists have no morals, or at least that we have no reasonable basis, or that we need to appeal to a supreme authority in order to have morals.
Yeah, that's just not true. Morals, I know people think absolute morality, so we don't have absolute morality, therefore we're not moral, but you can push anybody on that subject and you'll find out their morals are subjective to the situation. But I do right because, I do good because good. I don't do it because I have a fear and punishment system that if I don't do this, I'm going to go to burn in the fires of hell. It's more, I want to do this because it helps people, it helps the community. I don't feel pressure. It's just something I want to do.
Yeah, morality, it has a very strong basis in, what is harmful and what is helpful, for people, and focuses more so on, preventing the harmful aspects and promoting and with promoting, what is helpful. to healthy society. You know.
So I would add, going back to the having read the Bible and everything, is that morals in the Bible are very wishy-washy, but we have a caller.
Seems to be. All right. Hello, caller. Can we get a name or nickname?
My name's Paul.
Paul?
Paul.
Okay. What would you like to talk about, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, your comment when you said about the Bible, how does atheism how does atheism ground the morality? Like, what's the basis for morality? So you said that in the Bible was wrong. How can you say that as an atheist?
Say that what in the Bible is wrong?
Something or anything, anything is wrong.
How do we say anything is wrong?
Yeah, as an atheist.
Okay. Well, the way I would determine what is right and wrong, well, right and wrong I would say is a social concern. It's when groups of people come together and make agreements. There's also good and bad, and bear in mind I'm just using terms as I define them. I would say good and bad is more what I would use for my personal taste. When I look at, for example, Deuteronomy, say 25:11 through 12. Deuteronomy 25:11 and 12 says that if two men are fighting, and the wife of one of the men comes out and to stop the other person, seizes the man in a way that it might be deemed inappropriate, that the woman's hand is to be cut off, and it says literally show her no pity. I look at that and I say that seems to be a bit too much. It's harm being done to that woman, and that's harm that I don't think is necessary. It's over the top, you might say. So I would say I ground it in my experience of what is harmful and what is beneficial, you might say, or helpful. That's. Oh, I would say that's where I would start from. That I in my experience, what hurts I don't want happening, and what is pleasant I would like to happen. Everett, would you like to say anything on that?
I would just like that. We're social animals, and how I think morality came about is we had to evolve to live in civilization against things like want and murder, to go out and do these things in order to function. And I don't think there was a need for a God, because there's other civilizations that didn't use the Christian or the Islamic or Judaism, any of those that had perfectly moral codes against murder and everything. There was no Christian God or anything like that involved in it.
Right, but I mean, without something, you're saying it's a social construct.
Yes.
Yes.
What the Nazis did at Germany, according to what their social contract was, or so to speak, saying that assassinating all the Jews was right. But we as a Western society went in and imposed our social contract, our social value on them.
Right.
So who's to determine, like, what if what they did was right and what we did was wrong? How do we determine what's the basis for that?
Okay. First of all,
you're simplifying Nazi Germany. It was more of a totalitarian dictatorship. I mean, people had no say, or they'd risk going and being murdered too. You go ahead. No, you go ahead.
Finish.
No, you can go ahead.
Oh. As I was saying, you had a situation where people were being forced into something, or else you'd be killed. And as they expanded into other nations, that's essentially how what it came down to. You either complied with what they wanted, or they would kill you, torture you, etc. So, it's not really social contracting is essentially broken down. You have power. Power is what you use to enforce something you want to be done. For example, our society, we're talking about, Nazi Germany versus America and us going over there imposing. In our society, we have, our social contracting had not broken down, and we were trying to, of course, still refine it, but we come together in groups and we say, hey, here's what we agree on, here's what we should probably write down and say, okay, this is what we'll go with, leave it open for amendment and change, whereas over there was no room for changing it. And so you have that going on. So you also ask why we had, what we appealed to come over here and stop the Nazis, or go over there and stop the Nazis. Is that what you really wanted to know?
Well, no. Well, what's ground to say that what we did was right, what we did was wrong from our person? I mean,
Yeah.
what you said, then it really what makes right is power. So whoever has the most power is the one that's right.
No, what I'm saying is there are two different groups who have two different views of how things work. And power is what each group uses to enforce its views. Power does not determine right and wrong. Power simply allows people to enforce it. However, over here, what I was trying to get at is we don't tend to resort simply to power to say you have to do this. We have things open to where it can change. Over there, they did not allow for that. Rather, you had a group of people who were going around and intimidating, using fear, not reasonable dialogue, not social contract. There were no contracts to be made in this sense, apart from forced contracts.
But I think it's important to point out that Hitler was a Roman Catholic. He was using the teachings of Martin Luther and the Gospel of Luke, which is very anti-Semitic, to justify what he was doing. I mean, the Pope didn't stop him. He met with the Pope before. The Pope thought he was fine. I mean, it's not so. Christianity doesn't always define morality either.
But the idea is, we went over there. I would say the justification for going over there and stopping it is that, for one thing, they were talking about imposing that upon us. Nazi Germany was, and through reasoning out harm versus not harmful, what is harmful and what isn't harmful, we figured out Jews are not harmful as a people. They're not. They weren't willing to even have that conversation over there, and rather were going around being bullies. And so we responded by saying, enough of that. We're not going to let you continue. After it got to a certain point.
After Pearl Harbor, which we weren't really concerned about.
Right. Unfortunately, our nation really wasn't even that much concerned up until Pearl Harbor.
Nobody else was really concerned until Hitler started crossing into trying to take over Europe.
Right. So I hope that answers. If not, please ask further questions.
Well, I mean, I get it, but it's still not, I mean, still doesn't truly answer the question fully, because, I mean, it still doesn't answer what if their way was the right way or a better way. What's the determining factor?
How do we determine whether we were right or they were wrong?
I mean, you still haven't really came, I mean, you said it's still back to what we think is right.
Right.
You felt what they did was wrong.
Mm-hmm. That's what it comes down to.
Right, but they felt what they did was right.
Yes, they did.
So how do we determine who's right and who's wrong? And there's still no basis and no grounding for that. I mean, their Nazi social society said that was, I mean,
I understand what you're saying. What matter, but you've got to consider, it is all subjective judgment. For example, when you look at those two groups and you determine which one was right and which one was wrong, you're basing your judgment upon what you understand yourself, in your mind, what you understand to be good basis for, good and bad. The same as when I or Everett or anyone else looks at the same scenario. I look at that and say, I prefer to live in a world that is, seeking to understand things properly, and seeking truth, and seeking to not, promote a society where, harm is prevalent. So I would say, based on my opinion, that is wrong, in the same way that each side thought, by their own opinion, that the other was wrong.
If you look at a neo-Nazi today, they'd probably think Hitler was right.
Right.
I mean,
so it really comes down, in one sense of the word, it's like, I prefer chocolate, prefer vanilla.
It's not that.
Really?
I would say it's not quite that simple. Taste, there's a big difference between taste and, determining what is pleasurable and what is not in terms of pain. If you're, you can have two people who taste chocolate. One may like it, one may not. Then you can have, these same two people have a knife stabbed through their hands, and you ask them, was that painful? And I'm pretty sure they're going to say that was painful. If you ask two people, do you want to live in a society where murder is okay and it's not punished? They're probably going to say no, because they are, I'd say the basis for it would be, we as human beings share similar biological structure, very similar, and thus we have similar experiences. What happened in the case of Nazi Germany was that you had this particular group of people using bad information to promote I'd say, doctrinist about our dogma of violence towards certain groups of people, including Jews, homosexuals, I think blacks, and so forth. Even the mentally and physically handicapped. So, you know, it's a matter of, you could say, they were wrong in their justification, and we did not want to live in a society that they wanted to impose upon us where that would be the case. Does that make sense?
I mean, that makes sense, but it still doesn't. It doesn't still tell me when you say it. Still, we don't like that.
Mm-hmm.
So we didn't want that. But it's still about our preference, not about
right.
Which one's right and which one's wrong. I mean, so
okay. Okay.
I mean, according to the evolutionary theory, the strong override the weak. Well, that's kind of what Nazi Germany was doing. They were getting to decide people who they thought were weak, so they could have the superior race. So, what if their way was? What if they did what was right? We went in and said no.
Well, you're talking about right versus strong. Strong and right are two different things. You can be strong, but you can be terribly wrong about what you're doing or saying, factually speaking. And we know, as I've discussed, they were factually wrong about a great many things, such as what they claimed the Jews did and so forth, which was based upon years and years of Catholic libel against the Jews. In fact, you know, the Catholics have been the ones who first, you know, persecuted the Jews with that respect, even made the first ghettos. The thing I'm wanting to know is, how do you come at this then and determine which was right and wrong then? Paul?
I've lost you somehow.
Oh, okay. What I'm wanting to know is, how do you look at these two groups and determine which one was right?
Well, I mean, I have my own. I mean, it according to what you're saying, it's my preference, my opinion. I mean, I have my belief in what I think, what they did, what's right and what's wrong, but without something greater or beyond what we understand, and this is the kind of the question I have for you, is without something that's beyond me, beyond society, and beyond that, there's no grounding for moral values. I mean, it is about opinion, it is about preference, it is about a feeling, it is about who has the power determines what's right and what's wrong according to the atheist perspective.
No, power does, as I've said before, power does not determine right and wrong. Power simply gives you the ability to enforce your way upon others who do not wish to follow it.
So, I mean, well, there's, so it's your ability to force it and enforce on others, but there's still no, I mean, you're saying, is it social contract? Is it me and you agreeing that this is wrong? Or is there something that's beyond me or you agreeing that this is wrong?
I would say that it seems the only thing that matters is whether or not you and I agree it's wrong.
What if we disagree? What if we disagree?
If we disagree, then we disagree, and we're going to have to find a way to cope with that. Or we're going to need a third party to break the tie.
Well, I mean, the first law of life says, you know, A can't be non-A at the same time, which means you can't, both of them can't be right.
Well, no, I would agree. I agree we can't be right, but that doesn't mean I can convince you or you convince me.
Right, but I mean, one of us can say I'm wrong, one of us can say I'm right.
What I'm saying is, if you have two people who disagree and both are saying they're right, what matters is what they think, each of them. If they each think they're right and one of them is definitely wrong, then the question is, how do you convince the other person, or how does one person convince the other that the other is wrong? That's what really matters in this situation. See what I mean?
So it's like we should have convinced the Nazis what they did was wrong instead of imposing our power on them, right?
I think people tried to convince them prior, and they were not hearing it. They were not going to have it. So
our power came in, and we overrid their opinion instead of their convincing.
Right, they were doing the same thing to others. They were going around and, or not the same thing, to be fair, to us who went over, or those of us who went over there. You had people, you know, had the Nazis going around just killing people, not giving them any say. we tried to have them stop, but they refused, and so we intervened.
I'm watching your lips on TV, and I shouldn't be doing it.
No, you shouldn't. It's a delay. Sorry.
There you go. Well, I mean, I don't think we fully answered the question. I mean, if it's so basically the grounding of any moral framework, according to the atheist perspective, is basically if we come to an agreement on what we think is right. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Socially speaking, it's based upon what we can agree on. However, you do have the simple reality that you have different groups who may not come to agreements. And I still don't see how appealing to a higher power affects anything, especially if you have two groups of people who each appeal to a higher power that is opposed to one another to claim absolute truth or absolute righteousness and then oppose each other. How do you convince either of them? How do you determine which one is correct?
Well, truth is whatever corresponds to reality. So as long as it's whatever they're saying that corresponds to reality, then that's the truth, and that's what should be based upon. I mean, if an Islamic person and a Christian disagree on a topic, both of them can't be right. One of them has to be
or both.
Or both are wrong.
Yeah.
To be fair. Right.
So, well, how do you determine that? Well, that's the age of question about what epistemology is all about. About understanding how you know something. So
yes.
But
so how do you know which is right? If you have an atheist, a Muslim, a Jew, a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, all claiming absolute authority to say a specific piece of land or claiming absolute authority over morals or knowledge or truth, or even the right to dominate over all other peoples, how do you determine?
Yeah, well, it's an age-old question, I guess.
Okay, so how do you answer that?
Well, I'll be honest. I am a Christian.
Yeah.
So, and I wanted to have this discussion. I believe, obviously, that truth has to be revealed and truth is discovered. Something that we can't. It has to be revealed to you and has to be discovered in the world around us. It's something that transcends me, something that transcends you, something that transcends things that are beyond.
So you're saying to know the truth requires that the possessor of this truth, let's say I assume you're talking about God, has to reveal it to us.
Obviously, yes.
If that's
discovered truth, y'all just discovered truth. I mean, mathematics has been discovered. Moral framework. Yeah.
Let me ask you this then.
Morality has been discovered.
Well, let me ask you this: if it's up to your God to reveal these things to everyone, why hasn't He?
I think He has.
Really? He's revealed the same truth to every person, and so everyone agrees.
Well, He's revealed the truth to everyone. So I think everybody sees it differently or doesn't want to see the truth.
Okay. So what about someone like Everett or myself? Yeah. What do you think is the case?
Excuse me?
What about Everett or myself? Do you think we are rejecting this truth, or did the way we perceive it just fail to take?
I mean, I'm not here to judge you as a person, judge your heart, or anything like that. It's not for me to do. I mean, I think that if you truly, like, the passages that you quoted in Scripture, if you understood more of the context of the time period and the society and what was going on at the time, answer those questions a lot more.
So do you understand that society?
I don't understand it fully, but I have studied quite a bit of the Scripture.
I have a question. If God revealed the truth to everybody, why should it be constrained to a societal standard? Why should it just be in that time period, in that society? Why would you have to understand that to understand God's truth if it transcends everything?
No, okay, I barely understood you. Kind of.
I'm sorry. You said that you have to understand the culture and the time period. But if it's God's truth, shouldn't it transcend that culture and that time period? And that shouldn't be a factor. Understanding that should not be a factor in that.
Well, God's truth is truth. Truth is every truth. truth no matter where it's at.
Okay, so...
The laws of logic are true. So that means you understand them, I understand them.
Well, okay, I think what Everett's trying to get at is that particular law that I read about or cited from memory earlier that you just referred to. Everett's wanting to know, I think, and I'd be curious to know this too, do you think that is true today, that we should be following that moral code?
If you understand the scripture itself, no. We don't follow that today. Because according to the scriptures, we don't have to follow that mandate anymore.
And why not?
Yeah.
Because of what Jesus did.
But why does Jesus sacrificing himself just negate the whole Old Testament?
Because he fulfilled the Old Testament and through what he did.
So we no longer need to listen to the Ten Commandments.
No, they have a value, and they still have value. Now, the love God and love your neighbor is still in the Old Testament as well as what Jesus quoted in the New Testament.
But also in the Old Testament, you have orders to kill neighbors who believe and entice others to worship other gods. You also have this God saying that if a woman is not a virgin on her wedding night, you should put her to death. I'm curious, why would you not follow that law if it comes from an all-understanding and all-wise and loving being, and it is supposed to be a pinnacle of morality?
Well, I think that for one, that was given to a specific culture. The Old Testament law was given to a specific culture and specific people.
But why wouldn't you follow that today?
Like I said, it was not given, for one, it was given to the common culture.
They were told to follow that on and on. There was no end given to the Jews. They were not told you follow this up until a certain time. And there was never a change given to that. That's what I'm saying. Well, they just have the understanding forever like we do in the Hebrew language as we do today. So they use the word forever as long as until it was complete, which, reading according to the New Testament, but the New Testament is...
Jesus said himself that was fulfilled in Christ.
New Testament... Oh, go ahead.
The fulfilling of Christ, the prophecies from the Old Testament, is kind of just convenient. If you look at it, like when they go through Jesus' lineage, they go through Joseph. If Joseph wasn't his father, then he would not be related to David, and so on. I mean,
there are other issues with the idea that Jesus fulfilled prophecies, but you're trying to say that laws that God gave back then no longer apply today. And what I'm asking, because I've gone to, I don't know what your background is in studying this. I've gone to Johnson Bible College, which is now called Johnson University here in Knoxville. I went there for a couple of years. I've also grown up studying this and continue to now study this and read about the context and such. And from what I can find, I don't see any difference in understanding understanding the context as far as I do. I see no thing that justifies the law of cutting off the hand of a woman for helping her husband from an attack.
Yeah. Well, let's go back. I'm going to simplify it to one sentence. I'm not saying, as an atheist, you have no basis to say that that's right or wrong.
My basis is that it's harmful.
If God made a person, he has the right to do with it whatever he chooses. So
no, he does not.
Who says?
I say. That's called, what you're talking about is slavery. You're talking about slavery. You're talking about he has the right to do anything he wants to me. He may have the power. He may have the power to do that. He may have the power to do that. But I say he does not have the right. I don't grant him that. And I know a lot of other people who don't grant him that. And that's the thing. I do not acknowledge that as true.
Well, because you don't believe there's a God, so obviously you would say that.
Even if he existed, I would say he does not have the right to do that. There are things that people do not have the right to do to other people. We've come to these agreements in society that, you're not allowed to rape a person, you're not allowed to, do these things. And our laws about that are, of course, reactionary to deal with instances where people do that. So you have a God that commands, horrible things such as killing people, killing children.
As an atheist, you have no basis to even say what he did was horrible because you have no grounding for that. You say that's wrong, you have to have a law, moral law.
Oh.
Oh, you have a moral lawgiver.
No, I don't have to have a specific lawgiver. The thing you're talking about is incorrect. The moral argument, no. I do not require a moral lawgiver. I would say, though, I'm the one who determines whether or not that's right or wrong. I don't know if
it's back to preference, though. You just don't feel that it's correct.
Right. It's down to everyone's preference, including your God's preference.
But he's the only one that he made it, so he has the right to do with it as he chooses.
And I do not acknowledge that it's true.
If I made a chair and I wanted to go smash it against the wall, I made the chair, so I have the right to do that.
A chair is not...
a human being or not...
comparable.
You shouldn't...
A chair does not have nerve endings. A chair does not have feelings. And it doesn't. We don't give rights to chairs.
I mean, if we're made to be pretty much what God wants to do, God's playthings, not really something I want to be involved in.
Well, and I want to first of all say something. I don't believe that God is a vengeful. I don't think he's out just to do something at his whim.
But he says he's vengeful.
He does say he's vengeful, though. And he does say that he gets angry and takes vengeance upon people.
And Jesus even repeats these things, too. I mean, it's...
Well, I also know God's loving. God is gracious.
No, gracious is not drowning all the world's children and people because they're not listening to you. That's not gracious.
It's not Hurricane Katrina to bring it to modern day. It's not the earthquakes, the tsunami. That's not gracious.
It's not
something I can't say on TV.
It's not graceful to take a group of people you like, have them invade someone else's country and tell them to slay every infant they find. That's not gracious at all. Well.
Okay, you're all saying, I don't want to keep your time. You probably got other callers. I'm not trying to quit. I'd like to continue the dialogue.
I understand.
I don't want to get into just.
You're welcome to call back in.
Yeah, next week we do. So
there will be. We won't be on the show probably ourselves, but there will be some people here. You can continue the conversation.
And you can also come to our meetup at Barley's.
Yeah, that's after the show. You can come to Barley's and hang out and chat.
We have other theists that come. We're friendly to them. I mean, we'd love to discuss this with you further.
Okay.
So thank you, Paul. I appreciate you calling in.
Thanks for your call.
Oh, not a problem. I thank you guys for listening to me.
Oh, not a problem. You have a great day, man.
Okay, bye.
See ya. All right.
I guess we covered the morals thing pretty much.
All right.
Atheists have no hope or no purpose.
That's another misconception.
To be honest, when I used to think God had a plan for my life. It was set in stone. Now I have more hope for my life. I don't feel subjected to somebody else's plan. I can do what I want. I feel like I honestly feel like I have purpose. I don't feel a sense of loss or anything like that. I mean, I'm not but my purpose isn't for an afterlife. My purpose is for this life, and that is a lot more freeing than when I was a Christian.
The idea that, of having no hope, it's interesting because I know I became depressed as a Christian because I believe I lived in a terribly sinful world, and I believe I was irreparably sinful. Of course, Christians say the hope is that Jesus paid it all for you, but the fact is that whenever I would sin, I would be depressed because I knew I was hurting Jesus more in that sense. I would even get to the point of self-beating, like I would hit myself over such things because I would be so despondent over my situation, you might say.
Just just constantly feeling guilty that any thought I had offended God and I was going to pay for it.
Right.
And honestly being terrified.
Right, of hell.
Oh, yeah. And any thought, sin, or any action I did, going and immediately repenting and being afraid, it just wasn't a way to live.
Yeah, it was definitely a very painful way to live, psychologically speaking. It's like having Christopher Hitchens most often talks about it this way. It's like having living in celestial North Korea, you might say. He describes heaven that way, but even on Earth, it's kind of like that. If you are a Christian, because you believe God knows your heart, He knows your thoughts, your feelings, all your most secret, intimate things, and He can condemn you for them. We have another call. Hello, caller. You on?
Yes.
Okay. Could we get a name or nickname?
My name is Mary.
Mary. Hello, Mary.
Hi, Mary. We only have a few minutes, so if we can make this quick.
Yeah. So,
I just have a quick question about something you said earlier, that there's no evidence of God existing that you have experienced yourself. But there are a lot of people that have experiences, and they felt a presence beyond, and this is generally speaking, it's not specifically God talking to them from a burning bush.
Right.
I'm just saying that there has been a lot of experiences. It's not just God's presence or angels, or even some people have experiences of, you know, ghosts and evil things, and so there's a lot of supernatural that exists. I mean, because you didn't experience it, how do you perceive it?
Well, there's no evidence left
Credit
over.
it?
There's no evidence left over. It's all subjective to that person's experience.
Right.
And if you learn how the brain works, these things are commonly explained by the neurons and all that goes on your head, how some things can just snap sometimes. And see, a ghost sleep paralysis explains this. People feel trapped in their body, feel a presence in their room. I mean, just natural phenomena can explain these experiences.
What about people that see spirits and hauntings? They actually see. I personally had experiences. It's hard to explain to other people, but I do believe that there's more beyond death. I know the atheists, most of them say that it ends after death, you die, and then you're gone, and that's it. But how do you explain all the other things? Because I personally experienced it, and I wasn't on drugs, I wasn't hallucinating, I wasn't anything. So you're discrediting what I experienced? And I'm not talking about God, I'm just saying, like, other things that are supernatural in nature.
Okay.
So I'm crazy?
I'm not saying you're crazy.
I mean,
it's a common. I've thought I've seen stuff.
Let's see. The issue I would take with people telling me that they've had personal experiences is that there is nothing in your personal experience that is useful to convince me that it's true. I can talk about, hey, I saw this great chair, and I'd like to show you this great chair, and I can take you and I can show you the chair. But when it comes to something like spirits, ghosts, gods, UFOs, stuff like that, there's nothing you can go and show me to prove that what you're claiming is true.
Yeah.
And I haven't had the personal experience you've described, so I can't echo that. I can't say, yes, I know what you mean. I have experienced that.
well, but you also used other cultures that they're being able to maintain a moral code without having God's presence. But there are cultures that were respecting and believing in spirits. You got Native Americans, you've got other cultures. My grandmother was pagan.
Right.
So you just discredit all the supernatural altogether that doesn't exist because you personally have not experienced it? Is that really what it is? Because you haven't experienced it, then nothing exists after death.
There is no empirical evidence of any of these things existing. If you show me a great evidence of a ghost existing, if you trap one like a Ghostbuster and you show it to me in front of me, I will believe it.
But it doesn't happen that way. My question is, you discredit it because you don't see it, you don't feel it. Even hundreds of people have felt and have experienced things that you can't just explain.
Mary, I don't think I have discredited ghosts, etc., on the show, and you may be misconceiving something that isn't true. And by the way, we only have a few seconds left, so I'm going to have to hang up soon. But I want to address this. I'm not saying those things don't exist. I'm saying I know of no reason to believe they do. Yeah. And atheism is about God specifically. But I've got to let you go. Thank you for calling.
Sure.
Thank you.
Bye.
All right, so we got to close the show.
Yeah, it's time to start wrapping up, and get out your pen and paper.
This has been Freethought Forum, a program by the Atheist Society of Knoxville and the Rationalists of East Tennessee.
Right. Please leave us feedback. Leave a voicemail at 865-272-9060, or email us at freethoughtforum@yahoo.com.
You can see this show on Tuesday from 5 to 6 p.m. Eastern Time on this Knoxville station at 2200 Universal Time Worldwide at ctvknox.org.
All right, we'd like to thank all the help we had today, and I didn't have to say everybody.
Sorry.